Today, my friends, we're going to talk about something old from the ancient past of magic. Behold! Hey, that's my fate. That's not funny. That's not funny, you guys. Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. Today, we are going to discuss a card that could have been from the ancient past of magic. And what I mean by that is a card that existed at one point, but didn't make it outside of playtesting. It's actually incredibly interesting. This is a nice old school piece of magic history, and everything that wraps around this makes for a very interesting story. So the first thing that we need to take a look at is the actual card itself. And I use the term card very lightly because, as you'll notice, it's actually just a slip of paper. That's what playtest cards were used as back in the day. They're just slips of paper. Now, there are certain people who have some of these still kicking around. There's some people who actually have a huge, I've seen pictures of people with stacks this big of playtest cards. Now, the problem when it comes to little slips of paper like this, you're probably saying to yourself, well, wait a minute. If this is just a slip of paper, just a little card printout like this, like I could just print that out myself. I can make my own little fake playtest cards. And how's anybody going to know whether these are the real deal or not? Well, there are different ways that people use to authenticate this. There are people who've been around since the beginning of magic who can go, yep, okay, I actually played with these back in the day. These are legitimate. Or in cases like this, there will be an email included. This is a printout of an email which helps to authenticate this particular playtest card. So let's start by talking about what the card that was to be. Well, what a terrible sentence. I'm not editing it out though. It'll be a part of magic history forever. Anyhow, the card itself is called Blood of the Earth, all right? And it is a 2-red, 2-colorless sorcery from the dark. We're talking specifically about a dark playtest card. And what it does is, actually, you know what? Let me read the official wording of it from old school here. So you take all red creatures in your graveyard and put them directly into play. Treat those creatures as if they were just summoned. Lose 2 life for each creature returned to play in this manner. Effects that prevent or redirect damage may not be used to counter this loss of life. So that's a very archaic, very archaic wording for an old magic card. If you tidy it up, basically what it's saying is take all red creatures from your graveyard, put them onto the battlefield, lose 2 life for each creature put onto the battlefield this way. There you go. That's a tidied up version. There's certain language that they no longer put on cards. The whole effects can't be used to counter this loss of life. That sort of thing was included on a lot of cards where you didn't really need the wording. It's like old school control magic. Old school control magic has a huge paragraph explaining all these conditions, saying you have to give the card back after the game and all this stuff. And new versions of control magic just say you control the enchanted creature. So this is a red reanimation spell that brings back all red creature cards from your graveyard at the cost of 2 life per. Now this would be a very strong card if it existed. Very abusable. Mass reanimation specifically of your red creatures. You could definitely take advantage of this. Now it's interesting to note, at least for me, that Blood of the Earth, that name actually feels like it would be either a green card or a black card, actually. The dark has a very dark feel, as evidenced by the art that I've chosen for the background here to give you that dark atmosphere. So now let's talk about how these sort of cards, how these ancient relics are verified as being real. In this case, the individual who has this card also has this email printout all the way back from 1994. And it's interesting because this gives us a window into multiple aspects of magic history. It's not just the playtest card, but it can actually show us, for example, how the amount of time between when cards were designed and when they came to actually being printed. Because the set The Dark came out in August of 1994. That's when the set was released and people were buying packs. But as late as the 21st of April in 94. So you got April, then you got May, June, July, August. That's it, right? Basically 3 months before the set comes out, they're still playtesting it. Now, under current Magic, usually they're working at least a year out, and they have a future league to test things, unless they've disbanded that, to play test certain cards and make sure things aren't too powerful. But they have a long time to make changes and tweaks, and then things are set in stone for a considerable amount of time before it's printed and comes to be released. But back then, there was a much smaller window. In this case, it could have been less than 3 months, because we don't know. This is just part of the R&D, like research and development cycle of the Dark. We don't actually know when that cycle ended, because up until the 21st of April, they were still sending emails here. So this email that we're looking at is from Glenn Elliott, who was the coordinator of research and development for Wizards of the Coast at the time. And obviously, if you look here, you can see that they would send out multiple people would receive these emails. They actually had their own specific email addresses to use for individual sets. So it had the dark-l@wizards.com. So that would be the email list that was used for everything according, like, specifically about the Dark playtesting, everything of that nature. Now, what's cool about this email is it doesn't just specifically talk about this card, Blood of the Earth. It actually gives us a view into some other things as well. It starts out by saying, we like Frankenstein's monster, but we don't like the name. What does he have to do with Dominia? And this is actually really cool to see as well. Dominia, my friends, now that is archaic. Dominia and Dominaria are the same thing, basically. Those two mean the same. At a certain point, they just discarded Dominia. It was known as Dominia Prime. It was known as the Nexus. Actually, anybody who's been watching my channel for a very long time, all the way back since the Wizard and the God King, would recognize that part of their storyline referenced Dominia and the Nexus. Now, that's in the past. So, I mean, you have to have been around since I had like 200 subscribers. So that was a while ago. Interesting. But it's cool to see them mention Dominia. Now, Frankenstein's monster was a particular card from the Dark that they had already settled on was going to be in the set, but they're still talking about the name at this point, right? They're going, okay, look, we like Frankenstein's monster, but we don't like the name. What does this have to do with Dominaria? Like, seriously, think about current Magic. Think about Dominaria coming out and there being a Frankenstein's monster in there. Wouldn't you go, wait a minute. Wait, hold on. Are you saying that Dr. Frankenstein lives in Dominaria? Wait. Because Frankenstein's monster was created by Dr. Frankenstein. So you'd be sitting there going, wait, this character created by Mary Shelley exists in Magic the Gathering. Like, Magic the Gathering had different rules for card creation back in the day. They would use real world quotes and things. So the response to the question, we like Frankenstein's monster but don't like the name, what does it have to do with Dominaria? The response is nothing. But we don't mind real world references on occasion. And understand that the question that's being quoted is a question posed by somebody else, and this response is coming from Glenn Elliott saying nothing. But we don't mind real world references on occasion. Frankenstein's monster will be immediately recognizable by just about anyone who buys the game. Calling it Flesh Golem would have been just as accurate, but wouldn't have conveyed the same feel. Now, this is true. This is very true. If I say Flesh Golem, you will think a number of different things. Depending on your experience with Dungeons and Dragons, you may think of a golem stitched together from a bunch of different flesh. You may also think of a golem that's been created by basically melting a bunch of flesh down with magic and reforming it into a flesh golem. Now, the Dark did have Coal Golem, so it would have been interesting to have Coal Golem and Flesh Golem, but I do understand why they say, oh, hey, you know what, Frankenstein's monster, let's put it in because people will instantaneously know what that is. That was their way of trying to reach out to a demographic that wasn't as entrenched in fantasy lore. And it's cool to see. Nowadays, they would never do that. They would never do it. It would clearly be Flesh Golem. But hey, Frankenstein's monster is an interesting piece of Magic history. Now, the next part in the letter actually references Blood of the Earth, so you can see that, okay, here's where it kind of authenticates the existence of this playtest card. By saying, oh wait, look at this. This is an old email from the playtesters, and this email is specifically mentioning this card's name and a Degenerate deck that uses the card. So it says, our most Degenerate deck has been a red deck using 4 Ball Lightning, 4 Blood of the Earth, and 4 Inferno. Very few of us have been able to beat this deck. So Ball Lightning is a 3 red mana 6/1 trampler, right? So if you're getting, like, basically the idea is you play out your Ball Lightnings, swing with them, you Blood of the Earth, it brings back your Ball Lightnings, you're paying 2 life per Ball Lightning, but it's a 6-point uppercut to your opponent's face. And Ball Lightning was a big deal back in the day. When Ball Lightning showed up, a lot of people used it. If you weren't running Mazes of Ith, you were in trouble. I was one of the first people to really clue into Maze of Ith, and I got to play with them when it wasn't restricted. I played with 4 copies of that card, and let me tell you right now, anybody playing Ball Lightnings or Jusum Jins were just boned. It's like, you're done, son. You're done. Watch this. Oh, you attack? Okay, I untap it. Suffer. Oh, your Ball Lightning's gone. Oh, the Jusum's just going to keep punching you in the chest every turn. So good. So good. But either way, only 3 cards mattered from this Degenerate deck that they're talking about, where it's 4 Ball Lightnings, 4 Blood of the Earth, and 4 Infernos. Inferno does 6 damage to everything. All creatures, all players. So back in the day of Magic, I can see how this would actually be really, really hard to fight against, truthfully. This would have been a really frustrating deck to set up against, unless you were playing counterspells. Magic was all over the place back then. So basically, Glenn responds to this comment about the most degenerate deck and says, could you post the whole deck? I'd like to try it out. My group is going to be meeting tonight again, and this will give us one more combo to test. And then it goes on to say, here's my tournament legal, use it or lose it deck. It's pretty powerful, and, oh, sorry, my computer's being a little wonky here. All right, can you show me? Can you show me, please? Oh, that's so annoying. That's so annoying. Sorry, guys. It's a little frustrating. So here's my tournament deck. It's very powerful, and it goes on to talk about what's in the deck. So it's basically, this is the stress test deck. So what you need to understand, this is the stress test deck that the coordinator of research and development is telling other people to use to test decks. So it's 4 Disrupting Scepters, 4 Racks, 4 Yoshin Soldiers, 4 Counterspells, 4 Spell Blasts, 4 Power Sinks, 4 Clones, 15 Islands, 4 Mind Twists. Ooh, Mind Twist got restricted. That card's really strong. Pay a black and X and make your opponent discard X cards at random. Just brutal, especially with Dark Rituals. It's funny there's no Dark Rituals in this deck, but anyhow. 4 Send Your Vampires, 4 Drain Lives, and the letter cuts off and makes it look like there's 5 swamps, but it's 15 swamps. So this is a 70 card deck with 30 lands. Most of it is based around discard. It's discard and counter spells with a few creatures layered in there to do some damage. Interestingly enough, Yoshin Soldier is an incredibly weak card and really shouldn't have made the grade. If you look at the power level of this deck, you go, wait a minute, like Yoshin Soldier sticks out like a sore thumb. It is far weaker than virtually everything else in this deck. And on a funny note, at first when I looked at the piece of paper, I was just like, wait, there's only 5 swamps? If you have 5 swamps in your deck, doing a Drain Life is going to be really difficult because Drain Life requires black mana. So you could at most do a 4-point Drain Life and you'd have to have out all 5 swamps. But the person who posted this originally said, oh yeah, you know what, sorry, the way that I took the picture actually cut that off. It's 15 swamps. So overall, this is an incredibly interesting piece of Magic history. Not only do you get Blood of the Earth, which would be a very, very powerful reanimator spell for red. Not only do you get that, but you get this nice window into the past showing you that Magic had a smaller design window from design to release, showing that they didn't care back then about having real world references on the Magic cards. Also, taking a look at what the most degenerate deck at the time was that they could come up with, and also what a stress test deck was. And it happened to be black-blue control-ish discard. So, not terribly surprised considering how powerful black and blue were back in the day, but definitely surprising to see Yoshin Soldier in there. It's very cute. It was a naive time in Magic the Gathering where we were still in the beginning, right? Magic had been out for about a year at most. It was still in its infancy. So to me, it's really, really cool to get to go back and dive into those times because I was playing before the Dark came out. I literally started playing Magic before this set even existed. So it's neat. It's really neat for me to see, and I wanted to share it with you guys. Now, I am going to be working on a Takasia lore video. You don't know who that is? Well, you'll find out. A very interesting character, a pivotal character in Magic history, but in a smaller way a lot of people aren't aware of. So come on back, because I believe that'll be tomorrow's video, barring any sort of interesting news coming up or something going wrong where I can't get it recorded. But either way, I want to thank all my patrons and channel members for supporting my channel. And remember,
together we are the sixth color of magic.